Hi, this is Sarita Dua of the AskSarita Team at Keller Realty Professionals, and today I want to talk about the craziness of waiving contingencies. Literally, people will just go, Sarita, like this is crazy. What is it going to take to get a house, and should I be waiving contingencies? So let's talk about that and what it really means. The first thing I want to say is I'm never going to tell as your agent, as your buyer's agent, tell you what to do. My goal is to give you options and tell you what I see other people doing. And then you can decide for each home if those are the options you want to take. Think of it as a restaurant menu. I'm going to tell you the appetizers, the entrees, the desserts, all the different options, and then you're going to choose for that particular home what makes sense for you. For example, if it's one of 7 different floor plans that comes on the market all the time, you may not pull out all the stops. But if it's next to your mother and your mother's the daycare for your kids and is going to pick up your kids after school and you must have that house, you may pull out all the stops. It's going to depend on you and your motivation for the home. Why are people, though, crazy enough to waive things like 2 contingencies I want to talk about today? The first is the inspection contingency, and the second is the appraisal contingency. What they're saying is, hey, Sarita, if this house is say 550 and there's 20 offers and now we think it's going to go loads over asking, what we might tell the seller is, hey, we're going to inspect the property and we're not going to give up our right to terminate. But if we move forward, we're not going to ask for repairs. And the reason we're saying that is if you're going to say, I'm just going to make it up an example, you're going to pay 50 or 75K in a crazy world over asking. Well, then if there's a $2,000 item or a list a handyman can address or a bunch of minor items, you can, that's sort of, if you're willing to pay so much, that's kind of like a postage stamp if you think about it, right? You're already shipping the big box. What's an extra stamp, if you will? So people are getting creative because in our market, especially a seller has more leverage at the offer point, but then during repairs, if the buyer and the seller don't agree, the buyer can back out and then the house has to go back on the market. So the buyer has a little bit of leverage. And by waiving the inspection contingency, they they actually are telling the seller there won't be a second negotiation. The next contingency people do waive sometimes is the appraisal contingency. In our forms in Oregon, the property and the buyer have to qualify for the loan, and the bank is the one who sends an appraiser to make sure that the home is worth what a buyer is buying. And so if the appraisal, since we're going crazy over asking, if the appraisal doesn't come in at the purchase price, the buyer can actually, in our market, terminate and get their earnest money back and get out of the deal. And the reason there's a likelihood that the property may not appraise is because comps, comparable values, they go backwards, right? When an appraisal is looking at a house, they're looking at what sold in the past. They're not looking at current situations or the future. And so what people are doing is saying, hey, if the purchase price doesn't quite appraise out, I'm willing to either waive my right to terminate or bring in some amount of that gap to give the seller some assurance that they will close. Why do they do this? Is because cash offers have no appraisal. So by waiving the appraisal contingency or limiting its effect on the seller, you're more comparable to a cash offer, which makes a buyer's offer stronger. These are pretty heady topics, and I love talking about them. So if you'd like to talk about waiving contingencies in this crazy market, please give me a call. Again, I want to give you options, not tell you exactly what to do, but give you some creative solutions on how to get a house. For any real estate questions, big or small, AskSarita.com.